Well, speaking of tension, Marty, the last quarter of the book, you're not a happy warrior in one sense. In fact, you seem quite at odds with your own newsroom for some of that period. I mean, talk to me about that time at the Post, because clearly you've sort of unloaded a real sense of it was a painful time for you, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it started with some of the social media behavior on the part of certain people on the staff, and I thought it was creating problems for us. I thought that people were expressing opinions in a way that we certainly wouldn't have put in the newspaper or online or anything like that, and that it didn't meet our standards for how we ought to be comporting ourselves as journalists working for the Washington Post. And clearly there were many people on the staff, particularly people of a younger generation, who felt that they couldn't be one person at home and a different person at work, that particularly in a time like ours where there were these attacks on core values that I share, by the way, of tolerance and non-discrimination and free press and free speech and all these sorts of things, that it was under attack, and so people felt they needed to express themselves on Twitter and elsewhere, and I felt that wasn't helpful, and it undermined our reputation, undermined the credibility of our journalism and public confidence, and I still feel that way, and I think that people should, if I can, I think that people should think a little bit about why we have editors and editing. Let's go back to the basics of our business a little bit. And editors they have responsibility for the organizing and the execution of our journalism. And they decide who should cover certain stories. And in concert with the people who are assigned to cover stories, they then execute those stories. And they execute them with the standards that have been well established here at the Washington Post. And if there are circumstances that are new, they talk about them among themselves and sort it out as to what's the right thing to do. It's a collective process. And then we presumably produce journalism that actually is emblematic of our standards. Well, what happens if somebody who's not involved in that, somebody who hasn't been assigned to that story, particularly the most sensitive stories that we are working on, then decides to just take it upon himself or herself to express their views on a particular story, or to decide that, well, they're not covering the story right. I'm gonna set it right by tweeting out this particular piece of information in this particular way, that kind of thing. And the tweet never went through it doesn't go through any formal review. Nobody was consulted on whether such a tweet should be sent out, whether we think the timing is right. And by the way, there's always this option that if you think the reporting is not, something needs to be included in what we've done, there's this odd little option that's like, go talk to your colleagues about it. Go talk to the editors, go talk to the reporters, go across the room, assuming people are in the office, and go call somebody on the telephone, go on Slack, send an email. There are like multiple options for communicating with your colleagues about saying, look, isn't it about time we include this piece of information? That sort of thing. Or, by the way, there's a perspective, or, by the way, I don't really agree with the language here, or something like that. Rather than going on to Twitter and communicating presumably to your colleagues, what you think the story should be. And so I think that's highly disruptive and highly corrosive to those established journalistic standards that we were carefully cultivating with the editors, the reporters, everybody working on it, trying to produce the most careful story, and then find something sort of out of the blue. Because I don't think that we should think of our newsrooms as being like a tennis ball machine that's just like, propelling like, here's a fact, by the way, here's a fact coming from all corners. That's not what the Washington Post is or should be. It's not what a reputable news organization should be. And it just sort of blows up the whole process of creating a news report that reflects our best collective judgment about how we should cover stories, and particularly the most sensitive stories.
Well, obviously those social